What's up, guys, and welcome to the 8th and final part of Project 750 Li. We've come a long way from where we started a few months ago, and now the last step is to make sure that the car looks as good as it drives. Obviously, as you can see, I'm recording this after the fact, but today I'm going to show you how I detailed the car, and then later we'll go for a drive and talk about the parts used and the overall cost of the project. First up, I'm going to foam the car just to get the initial layer of dust off the top. Next, I'm going to tackle the wheels. I'm using Meguiar's Ultimate Wheel Cleaner, which should work pretty well on all this brake dust. Okay, so these stains are really hard to get out, so we're going to do it one more time, and I'm going to come with a clay bar to try and get some of this remnants off. All right, that really worked well. Let's try and see what it looks like. Alright guys, so I didn't show the full wash process because I was starting to run out of daylight, but I washed the whole car and then I also clayed it to get any contaminants out of the paint. Now that we've got it inside, first I'm going to detail the whole interior of the car, then after that we'll get to work on this swirled up paint. Here's the water out of the extractor, and well, yeah. Now that we've got the inside all cleaned up, we're gonna have to get to work on this paint. It's got a lot of swirls along with some deeper rock chips and scratches in a few places, so we're gonna have to use some touch-up paint. This is the touch-up kit that I got. The color of the car is Azurite Black Metallic, and normally I would have bought the touch-up directly from BMW, but unfortunately they don't make that color anymore. I saw some pretty good reviews for this company here. I've never used them before, so we'll try it out and see how well the kit works. This is a two-stage touch-up kit, so there's a separate base color and then a separate clear coat. It also gives you all these brushes. Personally, when I'm doing these, I only like to use these small white dabbers. I don't actually like to use the brush. It puts way too much paint on. And then when you open up the color, you can see it's got a really nice metallic flake in there. Here we've got a great example on the trunk. So you have a bunch of paint that's all swirled up here. Then you've got different mix of scratches. So some of them that go all the way down into the paint and others that are just in the clear coat. We're gonna start by wet sanding this area. Try and knock it down a little bit, get it wet, and then see what we're dealing with. This is what we're left with. So you can see there's a couple of scratches that actually go down into the paint. So you got one right here. This scratch goes a little bit deeper too. And this big scratch that went along pretty much disappeared. So now if we put some water on it, we'll really be able to tell. This is what we're left with. So you can see that there's just this tiny little spot right here that actually goes into the paint. All these other scratches are only in the clear coat. So that's good. I'm going to sand it a little bit more, and then we'll come with our touch-up paint and try and fix it up. Rubbing alcohol, lacquer thinner, any of those things just to clean up the surface and make sure you got a really good bond. I'm not sure how well it shows up on camera, but you can still see the long scratch that was in the clear coat. Sometimes if it's not too deep, you can get away with just wet sanding and polishing it, but obviously this one was a lot deeper. There's also this spot right here where it went down into the paint. So on this one, we're gonna add a layer of paint on top too. The name of the game here is that less is more. You don't wanna put too much because then you're just gonna give yourself more work to sand out. For this spot here that needs some paint, you have to be careful because since this is a two-step paint, so you have the color and then you have the clear, you only want to dab it so that the paint is below the surface, and then when you add the clear, that's when that's going to go above the surface. If you put the paint too thick, it's going to be above the surface, and when you sand it down, you're just going to be on paint, you're not going to be on the clear. So this is a very small scratch. I'm barely going to touch it just to get some paint down in there. You let it dry for about 20 minutes, and then you put the clear on top. So that looks like about it for now. First, we have to wait 48 hours for the paint to fully dry before we can come back and wet sand it. If you try and wet sand it earlier, the paint may not be fully dry onto the paint, and you're just going to peel it off and have to start over. So once it's dry, we'll come back here. You wet sand to knock everything back down to the same level as the paint that's on the car. Then we'll compound, polish, and hopefully it'll look pretty good. I have a feeling I'm still going to have to come back and do a couple of spots here. This paint is in such bad shape. I'm sure that once I start to clean it up, I'm going to start seeing other imperfections, but we're going to start here. All right, so this is starting to look pretty good. I can barely feel the ridge on my fingers, and it's starting to disappear into the clear coat. So a few more passes and we should be good. Okay, so I'm not sure how well this shows up on camera, but the whole part of the line that was over here is completely disappeared now. I can't even see it mixed into the clear coat, along with that one spot that was up here. We still have a little bit of work to go here, but The goal is that you want to keep flattening it down until it's flush with the rest of the paint. So there you go. The scratch has totally disappeared back into the clear coat. I can't feel anything. I can't see anything. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to work on all the other spots we made on the trunk. Then once I'm done that, we'll compound and polish. There you go. So now that we've got that paint nice and smooth, you can't tell where any of the marks were. Everything is blended together really nicely. Now I'm going to get some polish and we're going to start taking this down. It would have gone a lot faster if I used a little bit of a more aggressive sandpaper, like I said. In this case, I used the 2000 grit just because since it's my first time doing something like this on such a big scale, I didn't want to cause any problems. I was more comfortable using a little bit of a higher grit, 2000, and taking a little bit longer rather than risk burning through some paint in a couple of places. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Let's see what it looks like after a polish. To start off, I'm going to use some of Meguiar's Ultimate Compound on a compound pad. This is quite a lot of product, but since the pad is brand new, it's going to absorb a whole bunch of it. Well, I know that's just the first pass, but that looks really good. Wow. That looks better than I thought it would. So still definitely need some more compounding. I'm not sure if you guys can tell in the camera, but there's still some scratches in here. There's still a little bit in here, but most of that fading came right out. So we're gonna keep hitting it with the compound. I'm gonna get the whole trunk done, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up with a light polish. For the last step, we're going to use this Meguiar's Ultimate Polish on a polishing pad. Oh boy. Wow, what a result. This looks way better than I thought it would. Let me get a light in here. So you can really see that beautiful blue sparkle starting to come through really nice. I can't wait to get this out in the sun. So if you look closely, like I said, there are still a couple spots that are a little bit deeper. There's a little scratch here. There's another one right here. But like I said, for my purposes, from what we started with to what we have now, this is a really beautiful transformation. Let's try and get a closer look. This is a really nice color. Wow. On this one, you can see that they tried to use some kind of touch-up paint at one point, but they did a really bad job. The color doesn't match, and deep in the chip, the paint is already coming out. So we're gonna sand this flat, then we'll add the base, then we'll add the clear. So now we've got it leveled nice and flat. That whole top layer that was protruding is gone. This chip obviously has no color deep down inside. This one still has a little bit, but we're still gonna add color into both chips, and then we'll put the clear on top. So from this angle, you can see what we're talking about when we say the base color needs to stay underneath, and then when you add the clear, it has to come on top. So you want the color to be deep into the chip, and then you put the clear coat on top so that it bubbles on top of the surface of the paint. Then we'll grab our sander later, sand it down smooth, polish the whole surface, and that's how you get a nice blend. So as you can tell, these ones aren't as nice as the ones we did in the trunk because these chips were all the way down to the paint. So this is paint and clear. The ones on the trunk were mostly all clear. So even now, I think it still looks pretty good, especially considering right now the camera is about 6 to 8 inches away from the spot. So as soon as you punch out a little bit, you don't even see it, it blends right in. So this is a really good kit. So we'll call that a first pass. I'm still gonna come back, probably do a little bit more wet sanding in a couple places here. I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on the hood since it's such a big surface. It's really something that's noticeable. If I come on this side, you can really see how bad the condition of this paint was. I mean, even if I take my light, take a quick look over here, and then come over here, you can barely actually see the color of the paint coming through. It's so scratched up. I don't know if they were washing this with steel wool or what, but it looks terrible. Then if we come here, you can really see that nice dark blue hue starting to come through the paint. So like I said, first I'm gonna finish that side, then we'll come back, resand any spots that need it, compound again, polish, and really make it look top shape. Okay, big reveal. Let's see. All right, so after I was done polishing, I went around the car and gave it a coat of this Turtle Wax ceramic spray coating. Since I'm not a big detailer, I wasn't comfortable going and doing an actual ceramic coating since the application is a lot more difficult. This stuff is super easy, 2 sprays per panel, wipe it down, and that's it. To make the coating a little bit stronger, now I'm gonna come back and give it a second coat. So you don't wanna use too much of this, usually just about 2 sprays. Then you come back, follow up with a wet rag to knock down any high spots. So off camera, I also detailed the whole engine bay. I also finished cleaning the inside and I conditioned all the leather in the car. So now that it's all cleaned up, let's get it outside, see what it looks like under the sun, and then take it for a drive. All right guys, so here we've got the car out in the sun. Unfortunately where I live, there's just too many dirt roads, so there's already a layer of dust on it, but you can really see that beautiful dark blue pearlescent come through. I mean, when I bought the car, I didn't even know that it had that dark blue flake in it because the car pretty much just looked black or, you know, grayish. So if we take a look around the car, remember this is the long wheelbase, so I just want to show you guys kind of what this thing is all about. why people buy this car. So first of all, you've got that beautiful BMW individual interior, the suede headliner, and you've got the sunshades that go all the way around. So you've got this one here on that side and in the back, and you can either put them up individually, or if you just press and hold the button, they all come down. Now the coolest thing about being back here is that you can press this number 2 button and then you can control the front seat. So you can either use the controls here, or you can press the memory button, and I already have this seat set to memory 2 fully pushed up. So this guy's not important, you can push him out of the way. You can use your little footrest, stretch out, and then on yours, press this again. Now you're controlling this seat, and I set the memory to full recline. And I mean, this is one of the few cars that you don't even really want to drive it, you want to be driven in it. So you have your iDrive controller here, you can press side to side so both people can control it independently, and the driver can also set whether you in the back have full control or whether the driver gets to control it. You also have your heated and cooled seats, so that's really cool on a day like today, which is pretty warm outside. Then the other cool thing you have back here is this button, which is the massaging seats. So I know they call it a massage. Basically, it's the air bladders in the back of the seat that start opening and closing, and they move up and down your back. Honestly, it's more of a novelty feature in my opinion. I wouldn't really call this a massage. Some of the newer cars, especially Mercedes, has a really good massaging feature. This is kind of cool, but I wouldn't say it really gives you a massage. It just, it feels nice. So we'll turn that off, we'll put this back upright, and we'll take the car for a drive and see how she goes. Again, it's got the soft closed door, so you just go like this and the door pulls right in. And the suspension's adaptive, so you've got air shocks in the back and then just adaptive dampers in the front. And even driving down this shitty dirt road, the car is so smooth you wouldn't even really know it. One of my other favorite features in the car is the night vision camera. So unfortunately, it's not going to work really well. Here's another thing. Over a speed bump, you barely have to slow down. The car is so smooth. So with the night vision camera, it's basically a thermal camera, which is really useful at night. So right now you can tell the image is kind of, it doesn't have very much contrast. You can't really see too much because it's not made to be used during the day. It's hot outside, everything's heat soaked, so it's not really useful. But especially around where I live, more rural area, there's not a lot of street lights in some places. This is super useful. You see deers or animals on the side of the road, and at night they jump out on the screen with so much contrast, you can see them all the way coming down the road. Look at this, right over a speed bump, going 60, don't even have to slow down. This thing just soaks up all the bumps. It's a great car for driving around Montreal because all the roads here are so bad, and the issue I have with this car is after I drive it, when I get back into my car, which is a 2011 328, so the E90 chassis, it feels like I'm driving around a tin can because this car is just so smooth and so quiet, and I get into that thing and it feels like I'm getting a headache every time I go over these potholes. Alright, so now let's talk about pricing. I picked this car up last fall, so October of 2022, for 10,000 Canadian dollars with only 81,000 kilometers on the clock. The guy I bought it from was a second owner, and he only bought the car a few months before that with 76,000 kilometers, but he paid 30,000 for it. He was really happy when he bought the car, but after only a few months, the car started misfiring, so he brought it to his mechanic, and naturally, since he's not really a BMW shop, they tried the obvious things like spark plugs and coils, but the problem didn't go away and it was actually getting worse. At one point, it got so bad that the car barely ran, and eventually he had it towed to BMW to diagnose it, and they quoted him $14,000 for an engine replacement. These days, BMW just swaps out the whole engine for a reman because it's less costly than the labor to disassemble it all. Unfortunately, the car wasn't covered under any extended warranty or customer care package either. And the problem with the quote was that they said since the car is 12 years old, it'll likely have other things like coolant hoses and suspension work and whatnot that needs to be done, and that would be extra on top. So the poor guy was freaking out because he just paid $30,000 for the car and now it needs 50% of its value in repairs. So instead he decided to sell it on Marketplace, and I mean, he had it listed for months before eventually I stumbled onto it. You know, not too many people want to buy a non-running N63 powered 7 Series, but I was super happy for the price I paid, and the guy was just happy to unload the car. So I showed up with a U-Haul truck and trailer, which was about 200 bucks, along with a winch and a mount, and that was about another $800. The towing from Ottawa to Montreal would have been about $800, so I said I'd rather buy the winch myself so I can do this again in the future. So far that's about $11,000. Then in terms of special tools, obviously you need the timing tools, but I already had that from a previous X6M that I did last year. Just be careful when you're buying those because you have to make sure you have the correct gen. The original N63 or S63 is not the same tool set as the later TU models because they had Valvetronic. I think I only paid around $200 or $300 for this set when I bought it. Next, I purchased a hydraulic table, which was about $1,600. That's one of the best tools I've ever bought, not only for doing stuff like this, but just in general. Having a height adjustable worktop makes doing a lot of things just so much easier. This job is technically possible to do with the engine in the car, but I'd highly recommend against it. Again, that's how I did the X6M last year, and honestly, you spend more time fighting for space and running into issues than you do actually fixing the car. So it's easier to just pull the whole thing out, and on top of that, you'll do a better job because you can access other parts that normally you may not be able to in the engine bay. So if you have the means, I'd absolutely recommend just taking the whole thing out. So that's $12,600 so far. Now, in terms of parts, I've gotten so many questions from people asking about brands and part numbers and whatnot, so I've gone ahead and made a little spreadsheet with all of the parts I used in the job, along with the part number, brand, and the price that I paid. It doesn't include some of the smaller things like O-rings because then the list would just get too long, but all the actual parts like timing chains, guides, water pump, head gaskets, all that stuff is in there. Now when you're doing something like this, you gotta be smart. You can't buy all genuine BMW stuff or it would end up costing way too much. So do your research and try and find as many OEM parts as you can. For example, the water pump sold by BMW, that would be an OE part, original equipment, but the part is actually made by Pierburg. So if you buy the Pierburg pump, it costs less for the same part, but without the BMW logo. That's OEM, original equipment manufacturer. A lot of people confuse OE versus OEM. So anyway, in terms of parts, I spent about $6,000 for everything before taxes. So that includes all the parts for the engine, the used audio amp, the transmission pump, all the actual parts. In Quebec, the sales tax rate is about 15%, so that brings us to about $6,900 in parts. So $12,600 plus $6,900 brings us to about $19,500. And like I said, that didn't include some parts and a few small things, so let's just call it an even $20,000 for the whole project. A car in this particular spec, the long wheelbase, the individual interior, only 83,000 kilometers, is worth somewhere between 25 and 30,000 Canadian dollars, so I'd say we did pretty good. Either way, I do projects like these because for me, it's fun to take on something so complicated and you're always learning, so it's less about the money saved and more about the process. Remember, I'm not a mechanic, so this is just a hobby for me. I've actually been wanting to start making videos on some of these projects for a while now, and I'm really happy that I finally started because the feedback so far has been great. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did. Stay tuned as I've already got a few more videos queued up, including some work that I did on these turbos before putting them back in the car, and a few things I have to do on my daily driver before I jump into the next project. If you guys have any leads for interesting broken BMWs with mechanical issues in Eastern Canada, or even northeast of the States, please let me know at info@bimmerdoctor.com. I'm only looking for mechanical issues since I don't know what to do with a body damaged car like on a wrecked vehicle or something. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks guys.